Tash Dile, and welcome to In Conversation with Tibet TV. This is Sakina Butt. For today's episode, I am glad to introduce you to a long-time and an old friend of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people. He is an Australian politician and a former member of the Australian Parliament. He is also the former co-chair of the Australian Parliamentary Group for Tibet. He is Michael Danby. Michael Danby, it's lovely to have you here. Welcome to our show.
Great, and fantastic to be here in your new great studio.
Thank you. So, Michael Danby, my first question to you is, you have served for 20 years in the Australian Parliament, and we have heard from the Australian representative and also from the Tibetan community in Australia how supportive you are of the Tibetan cause. So, tell us what inspired you to champion the cause of Tibet.
Well, I come from a minority myself, a minority religion, and I think it's incumbent upon everyone who has an understanding of other people's faith and background to support other people of similar background. So I have to tell you, I didn't only support the Tibetans, I also supported the Muslim Uyghur people, the poor people in North Korea who are in concentration camps. There are 300,000 in concentration camps in North Korea. But the Tibetan people have a moderate cause, His Holiness's program of a middle way, autonomy within a Chinese federation, and peaceful way of approaching it. So I only support groups, the Baha'is, the Tibetans and others, which have a peaceful approach to doing this. So it's to your great credit, despite the terrible oppression in Tibet, that the Tibetan people hold to His Holiness's method, peaceful and a moderate program of the third way.
Are you in support of the middle way approach envisioned by His Holiness?
I am, because I think that's realistic. Of course, Tibet was an independent country even before China. In fact, when I visited the Tibet Institute of Medicine, I found out that Tibetan medicine existed 1,000 years before Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine actually learnt a lot off Tibetan medicine. So that's all true, but it's a superpower with 1.2 billion people. Tibetans are 7 million people. And if China would only respect its own constitution, which guarantees the right of Tibetan people to their own religion, to language, they should have education and all official forms, so that equally in Tibetan, not just in hand language. So, you know, these kind of things would really give a lot of encouragement to autonomy within Tibet. And above all, that only means the middle way if His Holiness, or if in the future some other Dalai Lama is allowed to visit his people in Tibet.
So tell us, how does China try to exert its influence through the Confucius Institute around the world, particularly in Australia? And do you think that they are succeeding in this?
They were succeeding, but there's been a lot of pushback in Australia and in many other countries, in Canada. It's coming in Europe too. What they try and do is to make all study of things Chinese very bland, and only what is approved in Beijing. The language, the terminology. You're not allowed to talk about Taiwan or Tibet, or let alone the South China Sea. So these Confucius Institutes are not obvious, but it's insidious the way they do it. And it came to be a big issue in Australia when the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the most senior bureaucrat in that area, Francis Adamson, stood on a stage and said, "We in Australia welcome many Chinese students to Australia, but we will not have propaganda taught in our universities. That we have free speech, and there should be all points of view on China, including on the controversial issue of Tibet."
So we know that there is a lot of Chinese influence in Australia. There were reports regarding Chinese influence in the Australian politics. So with all this interference, how do you still manage to raise your voice for the cause of Tibet and keep the Tibet issue alive?
Oh, I'm not alone. We passed legislation banning foreign donations. So one of Beijing's famous front organisations, the United Work Department, had paid different political parties $6 million of donations in the previous years to get a shift in foreign policy. We exposed that. and foreign donations were banned, and people who are not just working for China, but people from other countries who are interfering in Australian politics have to register as foreign agents now. So we also have foreign interference legislation. But the most important legislation, and this is what I urge all countries to do, is to have investments and business to be determined not just on economic interests but on strategic interests. So in Australia we have a system called the Foreign Investment Review Board, which should be imitated in all Western countries. They already have it in the United States, it's called something else. But they need it in England, they need it in Israel, they need it in Germany. All of these countries have big investment by Beijing, and they're twisting people's arms to get political results.
You know that last year US has passed the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act. So do you expect and do you think that Australia will also pass the similar act in near future?
We're not as strong as the Americans on this issue. We should be. It's shameful that we don't. China sends many delegations to Australia, and it's frankly an outrage that they don't take Australian delegations to go to Hassa or to see the real situation there. Occasionally they allow delegations monitored by the PRC to go. Once a famous Australian senator went with one of these groups and he escaped like a wild animal in the zoo, and he ran around Hassa to people's private houses, but they were very unhappy with that. And we have several times the parliamentarians of Australia written to the Chinese embassy asking, can we go? And every time they say, oh yes, but it's never okayed. So Reciprocal Act is a very good idea in all countries, and it should come in Australia too.
Okay, so last year it was the gratitude year where CTA wanted to thank all the Tibet supporters around the world, and I believe that you were the one playing the instrumental role, taking on the responsibilities of this thank you event in Australia. So how did you feel on that day?
I felt very proud, and it wasn't all due to me. There are many members of the Tibet Parliamentary Friendship Group. We have a wonderful Tibetan parliamentarian, Kinzom, who is the head of the Australian Tibet Council, and very good representative of His Holiness Lakpa, and we all work together. And I'll give you, so Tibetan people know that there's a lot of support in Australia. When His Holiness last visited there, the Speaker of the then Parliament put him in the public gallery and recognised him as a important spiritual leader, and 88 parliamentarians came to have their picture taken with him. So the Chinese have a lot of influence. Beijing is pushing very hard, they're very aggressive, but His Holiness is very popular amongst free-thinking people, and 88 Australian members and senators ran to have their picture taken with him.
So Michael, what is your view about the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that Chinese they say that they want to select the coming reincarnation?
This is cheek. This is outrageous. The Tibetan people, the Buddhist religion, should be able to select its own successor to His Holiness. I hope he lives to 120. But for a Marxist state that is officially opposed to all religion, particularly that in its great philosophers, Karl Marx calls religion the opiate of the people, for them to be interfering in Tibetan Buddhism's reincarnation is something almost comic. There's a great English comedy called Monty Python, and this is something out of Monty Python. For a Chinese communists to be telling Tibetan Buddhists, this is how we must do reincarnation. It's funny. Why don't we resurrect, as Lobsang Sangay said, Chou Enlai or Mao Zedong? Why can't the Chinese concentrate on reincarnating them?
Thank you so much, Michael, for your wonderful words, and thank you so much for supporting the cause of Tibet.
It's an honour, and it gives me a lot of dignity and pleasure and good karma.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV.